Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about transmutation, and I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how you can transmute different things. And I wanted to share this with you because what we're experiencing right now currently on Earth is pretty intense, and we all need to have these tools to be able to transmute what needs to be transmuted right now. And as I said in my previous videos, it's true that Lightworkers are here specifically to help transmute a lot of things of the collective. And so I'm just going to give you a couple of ways, different ways you can do that. So first of all, let's talk about transmutation. So transmutation is also called spiritual alchemy because transmutation and alchemy are two things that are really connected. And transmutation is transferring an element or an energy from one state to another. So for example, a kind of lower energy, so a dense energy, to a higher energy. And sometimes we can also say that we transfer it to its original state. So we might say we integrate it into the light, which allows it to dissolve into the light and therefore disappear. So I also just want to say a word about Lightworkers, because it's true that it's a word that we use very often. I use it a lot, but not necessarily everyone knows what a Lightworker is. So a Lightworker is a soul that chose to come specifically during these times of ascension to help the planet ascend. And the way that the Lightworkers help is through working with their light. Thus the term Lightworker. And the way they work with the light is either by anchoring the light, spreading the light, radiating the light. And so we can really understand how it is important also to know how to transmute in the light. So use transmutation as a tool of the Lightworker. And many Lightworkers are pretty sensitive people. A lot of them are empaths. And so as Lightworkers or empaths, we tend to absorb everything that is in our environment. So when we are surrounded by people or in a public space and there's a lot of people there, we tend to absorb either the thoughts, emotions, or energies of the people that are around us. And sometimes we have a hard time to discern what belongs to us and what belongs to other people. So in a way, it's almost like a Lightworker or an empath is like the garbage man or woman that picks up the trash from other people. And the problem with that is that even though it's a natural state we are in, because it's really connected to the ultimate truth, which is unity, that we are all one, so we are experiencing this unity through feeling what other people are feeling. And so there's no boundary there. And the problem is that sometimes, even though we might leave the space or that environment, we come back home, we're on our own, and we still feel the weight or the charge of the emotions, the thoughts, or the energies on us. And that's where it gets really interesting to know how to transmute all of that. So what I notice also during these times specifically is that because of what's going on right now and the different levels of reality and consciousness, and everyone is on a certain timeline and not everyone is in the same reality, is that it's almost like I can see it as vortices that if we're not centered enough or present enough, we always have a risk of being like kind of sucked into that vortex. May it be on social media because we connect with an information or a video, or even in reality when we just go shopping, at the grocery store or the supermarket, we tend to be absorbed by other people's fears or anger or whatever. So it's not only important to know how to transmute all of that, but it's also really, really crucial to know how to stay centered and present during these times. So that's the first thing. And first of all, I'm going to talk about how to transmute emotions, but emotions is something very specific because it's not like, for example, when we experience an emotion that's not very pleasant, maybe sadness, anger, fear, we shouldn't think of the emotion of something like we have to get rid of instantaneously, like, I'm feeling this, so I have to transmute it directly. It doesn't work that way, because if we do that, then we are in a state of resistance, and that is not the state we want to be in. We want to be in a state of embrace. So we first need to embrace the emotion. And by embracing the emotion, we can then be fully present to the emotion and breathe through the emotion. So how do we embrace emotions? And regarding that, I once had a vision, a clear vision, and I was shown just hands that were cupped like this, and a butterfly that came and landed into the hands, and the butterfly represented the emotion. So if we imagine that our hands are like this, cupped like this, and there's a butterfly that comes to land into our hands, and the butterfly is the emotion, we're not going to close our hands and trap the butterfly and just, trap it and so it's not allowed to fly freely anymore. Or we're not going to, push it away either. We're just going to wait for the butterfly to do what he wants to do in the hands, and then eventually the butterfly will just fly away on its own. Well, it's quite similar actually, the process is quite similar on how to deal with our own emotions, meaning that when there is an emotion that is present, so like a butterfly in our hands, we need to allow that emotion to be there. And so as I said, we can breathe through the emotion, and just let the emotion stay as long as the emotion wants to stay, because an emotion knows where it has to go. And by breathing through it and just, feeling through the emotion, it will also eventually just kind of make its own way and be transmuted. And of course, we can help that process as well. So the process of being receptive to the emotion and feeling the emotion is the feminine aspect, and then we get to the masculine aspect with it, which is transmutation. So then we have a good balance between feminine and masculine. So first of all, allowing the emotion to be there, feeling the emotion, and then when we feel that the emotion has done its job, let's say, then we can help it just to transmute it by, for example, visualizing that it just goes back to the light. And so it disappears, it disintegrates. And what's also interesting to know about emotions is that whether they belong to us or not is not really the problem, because in a way, no emotion belongs to us. Because even though we can sometimes feel that we absorb emotions from others, so they're not ours, and we still feel them, when we mention also emotions, for example, that refer to our past, well, the emotions that refer to our past actually come from our ancestors and are transmitted through the family lineage. So again, we could really say that these emotions do not belong to us. But it's not because they don't belong to us that we don't need to feel them. Because, as I said, we are here to help the collective, and we are here to help to transmute that emotion for the collective, because maybe the collective doesn't know how to. So it's a process where we just learn to accept what is and embrace that emotion, just to allow it just to go through the system and then out and transmute it completely. So of course you can transmute an emotion, but you can also transmute energy, you can transmute thoughts, or you can transmute about anything you want. And I'm going to give you different techniques that we can use to transmute things. And of course, there are a lot of different techniques out there for transmutation. So I'm just going to share what resonates with me, and you can of course use whatever resonates with you. And so one of the ways that we can transmute things is through using the elements. So water, of course fire is very known as an alchemical transformator and transmutator. And there's air, and of course there's earth. So whether we're visual or not, we can really visualize or feel that when we transmute something, it really gets into that element, whether it's the earth, the fire, the water, and it just gets completely transmuted and it just leaves our system. And of course, there is the famous violet flame and Saint Germain for transmutation. So I would say that the violet flame is kind of the new age name for it. But what we are looking for is really the purple or violet energy, which is a very powerful transmutation energy. So just by visualizing or invoking that purple violet energy, we can then transmute things. So for example, we can use that energy when we are in a public space, whether it's, at the supermarket and we feel that there's a lot of heaviness and people are quite in fear or they're quite closed off. Then we can really visualize or invoke that specific purple energy and start spreading it through the entire space. So that's a way we can use it, for example. And then there's this really direct way of transmutating, and I think that's my favorite because it's, we live in a time where we're going, to really enter this new spiritual paradigm, and I think this new spiritual paradigm is also all about simplifying things and using things also that are very direct. So the way I transmute, for example, so it's also something that if some of you are therapists or you do healing, this is a technique that you can use, for example, after a healing session to just cleanse yourself after that session and anything that you might have absorbed from a person. Or when you go back home after you've been surrounded by a lot of different energies, is that what I do is that I just visualize that I'm going through a kind of golden light shower, and this golden light is just pouring down through my being, through all the layers of my being, and just cleansing everything. And then I will mentally say, or sometimes out loud, I transmute anything that I need to transmute, and I send it back to the source of light, the source of all that is, to be completely transmuted. And that's it. And then, of course, if you are visual, you can visualize that all of that just leaves your system and goes back to the light. Or you can feel that the charges or the heaviness or the densities are just leaving also your field and going back to the light. And I think that's one of the most efficient ways to transmute, and it's very direct, it's very simple, anyone can do it. And lastly, one of my favorite methods for transmutation is through laughter. And laughter is really one of the most powerful ways that we can use for transmutation. It just dissolves any heaviness, and it brings back everything into a very into a kind of lightness, And I'm just going to give you a little story about that, a personal story. So last year I was giving a workshop with one of my friends, Rachel. So we were guiding the workshop, and of course when we guide a workshop with a group, all the energies of the group tend to converge to the ones who are guiding the workshop. So sometimes it can feel a bit heavy at the end of the day or at the end of the workshop. And we were specifically hiking near the Bugarash mountain, which is a mountain that is very powerful in energy, a bit like Mount Shasta in the US, for example. And so it's very powerful in energy, and it also activates the fire, so kind of a masculine energy. And as we came back from that day and we sat for dinner, we suddenly started laughing so hard, me and my friend Rachel, for like 20 minutes, and for no particular reason, it was just like or something stupid. And we laughed and we laughed and we laughed, and we could feel that as we were laughing, everything was starting to be completely transmuted. Everything that we had absorbed from the group from that day was completely transmuted, feeling that the energy was coming up to the solar plexus, opening the solar plexus, and then up to the heart and opening up the heart center, and then also going through the throat and through the entire face, and we could feel really the face like almost on fire. And it was really, we were just completely opened up and feeling this immense joy of just laughing and of transmuting things through this laughter. So especially with the times that we are facing right now, I think it's really important to be able to maintain that sense of humor, to be able to take a step back as well and kind of laugh also of the situation that we are going through, because laughter really helps to transmute a lot of things, and it helps us to bring back this energy of joy and of lightness that we all need right now. So I hope all of that was useful for you today. And of course, as I mentioned, I just mentioned what works really for me, what resonates for me. But of course, you are free to use whatever resonates with you. And perhaps you have things to share as well. So don't hesitate to comment below with different techniques that you might use for transmutation. That'd be really interesting for everyone. See you soon. Sat Nam.